Hey, it's Peter Waitzman here, founder of Expedition Money and a military personal financial counselor. Today, we're talking about one of the biggest drawbacks of this job that nobody mentions in the job posting: your schedule, your weekends, and the complete lack of flexibility you might be used to in other professional roles. Let's talk about the scheduling reality of being a military personal financial counselor. Because if you're coming from a corporate job with flexible hours, or if you value having traditional weekends off, this is going to be a significant adjustment. One major drawback, especially at National Guard bases like where I work, is weekend work. And I'm not talking about the occasional weekend here and there. I'm talking about regular, predictable weekend work. Here's why. Guardsmen train one weekend a month. That's drill weekend. That's when you're going to be busiest as their financial counselor. As a 40-hour employee, and the DoD program guide calls this a flexible 40-hour work week, which I'll explain in a minute. I work full days on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during those drill weekends. Let me paint you a picture. On drill weekend, I'm working Friday, Saturday, Sunday, full 8-hour days, 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's when they need financial counseling. That's when I need to be available. Now, you're still working 40 hours total for the week, so you get days off, but you won't have a full weekend off during drill weekends. What happens is that you can take a day off before the drill weekend, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, and then another day off after, maybe Monday or Tuesday. So you get 2 one-day weekends spread out. You might be off Thursday and Monday or Wednesday and Tuesday. It varies. Personally, I would much prefer consecutive days off like Thursday and Friday together to create a proper weekend feeling. But that's not always how it works out. And honestly, it's just part of the job. If you have kids in school activities, if you have family commitments that happen on the weekends, if you coach Little League or you're in a bowling league or whatever, this schedule is going to interfere with that. You need to be aware of that going in. Here's another scheduling wrinkle. You might also need to cover other bases due to staffing shortages, vacations, budget constraints. Sometimes it's for a day, sometimes it's for longer periods. Even if your assigned base is super convenient to your house, you could end up traveling to cover somewhere else. Now, in my case, my base is actually pretty far from where I live, so I actually enjoy filling in at other locations because most of them are closer to my home. It gives me a shorter commute for those days, which is nice. But if you specifically took this job because the base is 10 or 15 minutes away from your house, and then suddenly you're driving an hour to cover a different installation 3 days a week, that's probably going to be frustrating. And it's not optional. If your contractor says, we need you to cover Joint Base Lewis McChord on Thursday, you're going to Joint Base Lewis McChord on Thursday. That's the deal. Okay. So the DoD program guide calls this a flexible 40-hour work week. And I want to address that because the word flexible might be misleading. What they mean by flexible is that your schedule can be adjusted to meet the needs of the service members. You might work evenings if there's an event. You might work weekends for drill. You might shift your hours around to accommodate a deployment briefing or a pre-separation workshop. The schedule is flexible in that it changes based on what the installation needs. What it does not mean is that you have the flexibility to work whenever you want. There's no flexibility within this role in the way that you might be thinking about flexibility when it comes to corporate America. If your contract has you working 8 hours a day, you've got to work 8 hours a day, not 7.5, not 9 one day and 7 the next to average it out. 8 hours every day. And your point of contact on the base may have very specific hours they want you to be here. If they want you there when most of the service members are there, that might be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's typically earlier business hours, maybe a bit earlier than traditional corporate 9 to 5. Personally, I kind of like that. You're done a little bit earlier than corporate 9 to 5 too. This is not like a corporate salary position where you can take a long lunch some days or roll in a little later if you stayed late the night before or leave a little early on Friday if your work is pretty much done. You are going to trade off a lot of that flexibility that comes with salaried corporate positions. You're hourly, essentially, even though you're salaried, or you actually might be hourly, depending on the type of contract you have. You have to account for your time. You have to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there, and there's not a lot of wiggle room for that. You're also tracking your activities, all your activities. You're documenting counseling sessions, workshops you deliver, events you attend, outreach you do, government meetings, introductions and referrals, walking around, talking to people, admin time, training, whatever it is. All of that gets reported. Your point of contact is going to know if you're not there when you're supposed to be there. Your contractor is going to know if you're not hitting your hours. So if you're someone who thrives on autonomy and flexibility, like you love being able to work from a coffee shop, or you like having control of your schedule, or you appreciate being able to take a 2-hour lunch to go to a doctor's appointment and just make it up later, this job is not set up that way. Now, does this mean the schedule is bad? Not necessarily. It just depends on what you value. If you don't have young kids, if you're not committed to weekend activities, if you're okay with a structured, predictable routine where your hours are set for you, this might be totally fine. There's value in that predictability. But if you're coming from a job where you have a lot of control over your time, where you can work remotely, where you can flex your hours based on your life, you're gonna feel the constraint of this role pretty quickly. Looking back, I wish someone had been really explicit with me about the weekend work before I started it. It was mentioned, but I don't think I fully grasped that it was every drill weekend, not just occasionally. And I didn't grasp that at most armories, every weekend is drill weekend with different units or different brigades. So you have some flexibility to choose which drill weekend you're working, but you will be working a weekend. I also wish that maybe I understood that flexible 40-hour work week just a little bit more, that it doesn't mean flexible, it just means that you have to flex to the mission. And I wish I was maybe in a different life spot where not having a traditional weekend didn't matter quite as much. I have a young child, and it's kind of hard sometimes not to have a Saturday and Sunday with them, but it's also not a deal breaker for me. I've adjusted. But it's definitely something you should think hard about before accepting the offer, all right? That's the scheduling reality of military PFC work. It's structured, it's not always convenient, and you're giving up some of the flexibility you might have in other roles. But to be honest, maybe you're in a corporate role. The 40-hour work week is flexible, but it's actually a 50-hour work week or a 60-hour work week. I've been in those situations too. This actually, compared to some of the other salaried flexible times I've had in corporate America, is actually a lot better. So it's not all just trade-offs. If you're kind of looking to get out of a toxic work environment or get away from micromanagement, work more autonomously, and just really know that you start at 7:30 and end at 4 most days, then this could really work for you. Hopefully, this has given you some insights into what the work expectations are, but stay tuned for a lot more details. I'll see you later.